this machine is like several others that I've designed, in that we have a specific need that hasn't been filled, and we try to design something to do that. It can get to be a very emotional experience if you're trying to help people. It's quite a bit different than designing something to make money. I've done both of them. But this is to help people. The parallel to this is the pit was designed, and I helped design the pit, got credit for it, whether I need it or not. The pit was designed as an alternative to crawling in the dirt. And it's in as we know, in 50-some countries. And we lifted people up out of the dirt, out of the filth, and gave them a different life.
It's important to know, I think, that the pit, the concept for the pit, came from the mission field. We had been shipping typewriters, sewing machines, bicycles, clothing, and other items to a missionary in what was then Zaire, missionaries Larry and Laura Hills, for some time, and had never met the Hills. I knew them by reputation and by letter. They announced they were going to be in Des Moines, Iowa to do a program, and Barbara and I decided we would drive up and meet them and get acquainted and evaluate what we've been doing. So as we met and as we departed, Larry said, "There's one more thing we need. I hate to ask you, you do so much, but we need a hand-cranked, three-wheeled wheelchair for the rugged trails and roads of Zaire, for the people that have lost their legs to landmines, polio, and other things. And it should especially be capable of hauling items. They need to haul things as they go." So with that challenge, I put to work my personal theology, which is if you see a need and you can do something about it, do it. My understanding of how we live out the cross, the line of human need crosses the line of our ability to meet that need. God speaks to us in that moment, not in a loud voice, but in the clear, small voice of the conscience. So I felt that that was something I could do, that I had resources and friends and so forth, and came home determined to see what I could do. I immediately called my friend Earl Miner, who had worked with me in development projects for a number of years. He's lived at Marshfield, Missouri, and said, "Earl, we need your help." He understood the need and promised to do something about it. It took him a while. He was busy. But we began a series of prototypes of hand-cranked, sturdy wheelchairs. We went through 5 prototypes, I think, including some wooden models and all of that, and came up with one that we thought would work in Zaire. We sent 4 of them over to Larry and told him to put it in the worst place he could and test it and see if it was what he needed. It was about 5 months. He put it in some terrible places. One man went 8 kilometers twice a week down a terrible road to get to his garden and bring produce home. And it met the test, and Larry said, "Let's go for it." So we began producing them. At the same time, in an effort to reduce costs and get them made as efficiently as possible and involve people, I developed the concept of what some would call cottage industries. I knew that we had retired people, especially out across the country, who have farmers and others who have skills with welding, woodworking, such things as that, who are retired and who have compassionate hearts and want to help people. So we began that, to ask for volunteers who would make specific parts. That process worked and has been a key to the success of the pet, because we now have probably 100 or more volunteers, or maybe more, across the country that are feeding our production sites with the parts that they make.
Here we are, and we have a familiar face putting together the pets. We're putting those together right now here in Pimienta, in frente de la Municipalidad de Pimienta, aquí. Sí. Sí, bueno, y otra. We have another one right here. Sí, están construyendo. They're building this one. Sí, oh, otra cara muy familiar. Es Byron. Sí. Good job. And we have two people here today who are here to get their pets this morning, first thing. Janice actually took these names, so we'll get their names in a little bit. But here we are, we have two people who are here to receive pets.
Mel West was the inspiration for the pet. Mel wanted something, he asked me to design it, and I designed it. All right, a simple machine that there's some similarities to this, but for the conditions it had to work in, it had to have a traction wheel, and it had to be propelled by a reduction gear transmission, rather than, we're talking about two different sets of circumstances for a machine to work in. Overseas, in those 57 countries, it's pretty rough. That's why the pet looks like it does, and that's why any machine looks like it does, because it has to serve a purpose. And when it serves a purpose, it will take on the visible, you might say, characteristics of what it does.
Very typical. Carry them in, roll them out. You can imagine what an exciting day this is to the families and the people themselves. It's a polio victim, I would imagine.
There are people out there who are literally crawling along the ground. And one of the other things I do is Vacation Bible School. I put together curriculum for people to use. And we try to make not only children but adults understand that there are people out there who crawl on the ground to get from place to place, or people are carrying them, on their backs from place to place. And if you think about, okay, what happens, here's a child trying to go to school and it's just rained. What are they going to look like by the time they actually get to school? And we try to help them understand that, not everybody has a wheelchair or access to a wheelchair, nor does a wheelchair work everywhere in the world. And so these are really great. It gives people the ability to get out of the house, it gets them up off the ground, it gives them dignity, respect. They can look people in the eye, they aren't crawling, they aren't using, two hands and a leg to kind of walk along in a strange position. So just really, the gift is so that they can be mobile, so that they can have a life and not be dependent on other people.
There's a lot of things machines can do that people can't. I'm one of them. I am not a politician. I'm a designer. I try to make that plain. I can design this stuff all day. I can give you examples. Most of mine have been successful in the context of what I was asked to do. I can give you an example. I can show you one. Let me demonstrate an example. Okay, this thing here, I was employed by Detroit Tool, and they asked me to design a gear reduction, okay? They were into gear reductions. They said, we want a simple gear reduction. Okay? So I said, well, when do you want it? Tomorrow. I was being smart. But on the way home that night, I had the idea. If I take 2 gears, and there is 1 tooth difference, and if I span across those 2 gears with a connecting gear, then when I make 1 revolution with this, I move 1 tooth this far with this much movement. Okay? Now, we're explaining how things work. Now, so I build this thing and make it real pretty, and I put a cover over it so my boss can't see what's inside of it. And I take it in and put it on his desk. And this is only 3 days later. He's getting this thing all right. So he goes in, and most of his staff are gathered there, and they're going to go to lunch, and here's this thing sitting on his desk. So he takes this, and he turns this, and this thing just barely turns, see? He's fascinated, but he don't know how it works, so I got a cover over it. All right. So they go to lunch, and while they're at lunch, I sneak in there, and I take this sucker apart, and I change gears. Okay? And I put this gear, the smaller one, on here, and then I put this one on, and then I put this back on, and I put this back on, and meanwhile he and his staff people, which I didn't join them, he comes back, and he starts turning it, and this sucker's turning backwards. Blows his mind. He gets on the phone, he says, "Miner, get your rear end in here. I want to talk to you. What's going on here?" All right. Now, make a long story short. It would transmit motion, but it wouldn't transmit torque. Okay. But we go to the patent office with it. Patent office said all traces, he said, I have news for you. This was designed in 1931, the year you were born. But all traces of it left the patent office in 1935 and come back in 1967. I don't know what the deal is. And he's a patent. All right, now let's fast forward about 4 years. And this thing is sitting on this bench. And 2 brothers came in from Aurora, Missouri. And one of them saw it sitting here, and he kind of froze. And his brother saw this, and he saw this, and he patted his brother, and he says, hey. I said, okay, what's going on here? And he said, my brother was in the OSI in World War II. He looked for something like this all during the war and hoped he wouldn't find it. So then the brother said, Earl, did you see the movie 12 O'Clock High? I said, yeah. He said, did you see the man sitting there turning this little deal? I said, yeah. The bombardier? Yeah. He said, what that is, that's the heart of the Norton bomb sight. He said, this, I've only seen either the ones on the Norton bomb sight or this one on your bench. Okay. He said, how long did it take you to figure it out? I said, about 15 miles.
I was teaching wood shop in high school in Goodrich for about 30 years. And the philosophy we had in a wood shop there was the same as we do here. We've been making so much for so long with so little that now we can make almost anything from nothing. So with this particular model of the little toy, this is a 2x4 cutoff from local people who are building houses and other things like that. And then the wheels on this one we're buying, and we have gotten over to this. This is my African model, and this one is really tough, stronger axles, and we make the wheels from just little scraps of wood. And then here are some more scraps of wood that we got. Somebody did some flooring, and these are little pieces of flooring that they never used. And there's a boat factory, and they have this kind of wood galore, just a lot of it. It's just cut-offs, you know. And so we make these little peg games. We have 3 different peg games, and I just started this out. And Mel says this is just what they need, something to make them think a little bit, you know. Okay. So we brought a box full, 2 boxes full of them, plus a lot of little. So there's just a whole lot of toys for kids, and one will go in with each pet then.
That's true.
And so this is the kind of thing now that I can give my, I have fellows bring it. Everybody brings me wood. They know what we do with it. And so he brought a lot of 2x4s, and one of my friends in church that works in the shop. And we just give this wood and the pattern to one of my local friends, neighbors, and he takes it home, and when it comes back, all we need is wheels and clear coat, so it doesn't get dirty. If it's not clear coated, it's going to be dirty. So that's kind of the story. We made hundreds of these already.
As a pastor and as a Christian, I have said I do not believe in divine intervention. I think if I jump off a silo, I'm going to hit just as hard as somebody who doesn't pray all the way down. But then I say I don't believe in divine intervention until it happens. And you can use your own judgment about this story, but it's one of the most important stories in Pet. I was building these in my garage here in Columbia, and I'd take them out and drive them around the block to test them and so forth. And so the community was aware that this crazy preacher was doing something over there. Well, one night about 8:30, I got a knock on the door, and it was a neighbor whom I vaguely knew. Our lots cornered up, and we would wave across the corner. He was there with a fellow whom I've never met. That fellow was Mark Richard, who is a head person with the project Hope Haven out of Rock Valley, Iowa. And he was a friend of my neighbor and had come to stay all night. And in the course of the conversation, the neighbor said, my neighbor over there is doing this crazy thing with wheels. You might be interested. Well, Mark Richard is and was head of an organization called Hope Haven that gathers 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 used wheelchairs a year, runs them through 4 prison systems, and has them totally rebuilt till they're better than new, puts them in boxes, and goes overseas and distributes them. They were looking for a hand-cranked 3-wheeled wheelchair and hadn't been able to find one that suited their requirements. Well, we went out to my garage at 8:30 that night. He took one look and said, "That's it, let's talk." So that has been an amazing part of PET, because most of our distribution here in Columbia goes through Hope Haven.
That's Mark Richards from Hope Haven. He's one of the world's leading experts and proponents of mobility. See, this fellow lost his legs probably in a landmine.
Payday around here, Mel will come in and say, "All right, everybody stop." And he's gotten a letter from somebody or a picture. There's I don't know whether you noticed the bulletin boards in the toilet. And there's one that just came in a couple of weeks ago, this fella, before and after. But he brings these in, and then you think, well, damn, you know, that person, I don't know if you've ever seen the film that Mel has of people actually scooting on their butts and sliding on their hands and knees. And occasionally you say, well, maybe that person can move around, and the idea of this person becoming self-sufficient or more self-sufficient, you know. And then last Sunday in Sunday school, we studied about this fella who stood in front of the temple begging, and Peter, one of Jesus' disciples, got the guy by the hand and helped him stand up, and he was healed. Now, I don't pretend to think we're going to heal anybody, but if we can get them up off their hands and knees and get them moving around, that's great, I think.
This is how he walks. Gracias, gracias. And so we're going to bring his part to him. Okay, momentito. Here it comes. Como eso. Sí, así es mejor porque eso es. Sí, siente más eso. Sí, bueno. Sí. Here he goes. He'll be able to get right into there. Here he goes. Showing him all the parts. Bueno. Sí, por favor, con las. Sí. Listo. Sí, bueno, bueno, bueno. Bueno.
Well, I've known Mel for years, and then I've done a lot of volunteer work over the years, and so he needs some help. So I can kind of evolve from that. Plus, I've got a grandson that lost a foot in a mower accident, so that's just a little more incentive to do something like this here. And I need something to do with keeping my time occupied. I'm semi-retired, you might say, and so and it's a very enjoyable feeling to do something that helps people around that you never know, you'll never meet. And we've got these here in about between 55 and 60 different countries now. So the pictures we get back from the various recipients is very rewarding. I just got a picture back. I make the child size, assemble the child size entirely here, and got the picture back from Uzbekistan, I believe it was with it, over around the Russia area, and this young kid that was unable to walk, and saw him on one that I'd made, so that was kind of very rewarding. My favorite, you might say, is a Vietnamese man. He showed him walking in on he had a little platform he sat on and two little deals he could support himself on as he walked on his legs, arms, and he's very distinguished looking, very, you might say he had a lot of self-pride in himself, and got his pet and showed him driving out, and he waved as he left, and that was very, very touching. So that's a reward for doing a lot of this stuff, is just seeing the pictures that the recipients that receive them.
And you see the video of the people crawling on the ground, and then are able to lift themselves up on the pet and lift themselves up in life, because they're now able to get around, gainful employment, and really elevate their quality of life. It's just heartwarming. It just grabs you, and you wanna do more, and that's what we're working on.
My ambition, my goal, my dream is that we can create an alternative for the wheelchair for everyone that's in one. That they can see, hey, I've got a wheelchair, I'm gonna get a new model, but it ain't gonna be a wheelchair. It's going to be one of these. It's gonna give me more freedom, and it's gonna give me the exercise. And I would hope that the medical profession, like we've already experienced with the medical profession, that they see all the possibilities of this. They see the exercise. They see the mental stimulation. Okay, we're creating hope. It would be better if the veteran come home, and when he come out of the hospital, he didn't go home to a wheelchair. He came home to one of these.
Let's see. It takes a little bit to figure out how to jump into it real fast, but There you go. Bueno. This man was injured in the army, and it's been, I think, what is the 35 years that he's been unable to walk. He has nothing below the knees. He does have some upper leg strength, which actually would be awesome for him. He'll probably really be able to really use it very well. There you go. Gives a great amount of independence. It's not going to take him very long to figure this out. He'll be able to get around much better. He did have a wheelchair, but his wheelchair is not very fancy and certainly won't go where he needs to go.
When he gets a little more skilled, he could go down those steps with the pet by riding the brake and bouncing down each step. But right now, he needs help. That's what pet's all about right there. Crawl up to it, get on, and take off. No more walking in the mud and the dog manure and the rocks and the dust and the automobile exhaust.
But I think it comes down to the people, and the people that see the people. And when they see the people and see what they have, they say, okay, I know somebody down the road needs one of these. And the answer is, okay, are you going to help get it, or are you just going to talk about it? And that's where the pets come from. The people that donate the money are the little people, and the people that build them are the little people. And I'm one of them. That's it. Now we go to the checkout counter.
Bakery, yes, I'll call line 2, bakery line 2.